Welcome as you're coming into the Campfire Talk. We're just getting started.
My name's Hank.
Hi, I'm Jeff, also known as Hiker Trash.
I'm Bam Bam.
I'm Michael Werner.
My name is Cookie.
It's Most Valuable Camper, MVC.
It's Miss Jackson, that's my playa name.
My name is Katie Blackburn in the default world, but most people call me Lady everywhere I go.
The way I tell people I love them is I feed them.
We make glimpses, and we have a pretty cool kitchen.
We are fully prepared, fully stocked. All the food is prepped in the freezers, and we do a hot breakfast and hot dinner every meal.
In Mistopia, we have roughly 100 people, and the kitchen is kind of like the heart of all of that. So we have a camper, like 4 or 5 campers that really like do all the work to make sure that we have the food, beverage, everything that we need here in a timely manner. And then rotating cast of about 12 each day to make sure that everything gets cooked.
Kitchen, or part of our kitchen, is this, and inside. Come on in. Pickles. We got some green beans. We got some cauliflower. We got some carrots.
Now we have items that are very easy to operate. You just, camp chef stove, everybody knows how to use that. A smoker and an oven. So everything is designed to be very efficient and very easy to use so that people don't feel so intimidated and they feel more creative and more abundant.
So we do curries, soups, things that are more that have more moisture in them, rather than dry.
We need food, water, shelter. If we eat well to nourish our bodies, we have the health to be able to thrive and live the best lives we can.
When you feel friendship with everybody, then you want to feed them to make sure they get something balanced, something wholesome, and something filling.
We try and find artists that don't have a lot of resources, and we try and feed them because they usually don't have time, and we know how hard it is to build their art. And during the Burn Week, we try and gift our food and our love to the rest of the community.
I just love this camp so much, so I want to make sure every single person is fed. That's my favorite time, is when we all grab our meals and go and sit down together and eat together. I love that. I love that. And share stories of what we've seen that day and what we plan to do later on tonight. I love that so much.
And do really beautiful meals for people that don't expect it. Because for me, what Burning Man is magic and finding things that you would not expect.
My perfect meal, fruit salad, grapes and cantaloupe, honeydew, watermelon.
Is my favorite meal, which is fried chicken. I love fried chicken.
And mango, peaches.
On the playa. And meatball.
Probably a really large salad.
Perfect meal, one that I don't have to make.
Mandarin oranges.
Like a pork noodle with mushrooms. It's fantastic, and then we always have leftovers, so I get to have it when I'm doing it.
Cedar plank salmon meal. There's one of our campmates, former campmates, he lives up in Alaska. And he hand catches all the salmon when they run on this river.
A little olive oil and a little bit of salt. Let it sit for a little while and then chilled. That would be real. That's what I crave right now.
No, I love steak. So a steak dinner, steak and potatoes would be fabulous.
Ooh, best meal on the playa. We made paella 2 nights ago, and we also made a sous vide pork loin with a mushroom duxelle in the middle, and that was delicious.
Perfect meal is the one that gives you the best experience. Maybe a cup of tea at a random place out in the middle of nowhere.
It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be delicious.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see you all here. Oh, we've been just talking about Birdie Man. Even just talking about eating food on the playa is making me hungry. And hopefully over the course of our meeting tonight, we're going to stoke up some hunger for some good food on our future playa meals. As we get started tonight, we'd love to start things off by asking you to utilize the chat to introduce yourself to each other. Let us know what camp you're with and where you are zooming in from. And as we get started, just a reminder of some of our meeting guidelines. For our call, we'd ask that you please keep your mic muted, but please feel free to utilize the chat. Utilize the chat to send questions for our panelists. We'll field them to them at the end of our topics tonight. Be respectful throughout. Please do participate, be present, speak from your own experience. Tonight, really excited to welcome you to Campfire Talk, Season 4, Episode 5. Episode 5. We are talking tonight about kitchens, cooking, and food. And camp support in particular, we have several of us here supporting this session. We have some camps from around the playa to talk to us about all of this. And this will be our conversation about the heart and hearth of our camps, kitchens and cooking, where we feed ourselves and each other. Our kitchens serve as a really important communal and acculturation space, and how and what we eat to survive in the desert can really express who we are. So we're really excited to have this conversation tonight. Hopefully the video that we watched stoked some great ideas for us and seeing some of the pictures of people's kitchens. And I'm really excited to also hear the questions that come up that you put in the chat for our panelists as we get through this. While I introduce you to our panelists, we're going to gather some information about what we're interested in particular. So you'll see a poll come up on your screen. Please feel free to fill out the poll. And I'm really interested to see what comes out on the other side. In the meantime, I'll tell you about who we're going to be in conversation with tonight. We have with us from Feed the Artists, Urian Trimmer. Urian has been a burner since 2017 and runs the camp Feed the Artists. Feed the Artists is a longstanding food camp at Burning Man and provides meals to artists during Build Week and the burner community during Burn Week. In the default world, Urian pontificates on financial markets, but prefers cycling and cooking, and of course, hanging out with his burner family. We also have Kat Nadell. Kat loves nerding out about food waste diversion. She's the playa-wide compost queen and started the compost collection offering at Burning Man in 2016. Her vision for a cleaner world includes diverting the food waste of all 70,000 Burning Man participants. Welcome, Kat. We also have Jessie. Jessie began her journey in 2010 on a whim for leading camps, Porch Times, House Cats, and Porch Cats for several years. She has made build team contributions to Burners Without Borders and offered camp support for creative projects like Born to Roam and the art car, The Couch Armada. A glutton for punishment, Jessie also leads variations of her camp in the Portland Regional Burn Soak for 6 years. Hi, Jessie. And we also have Alexis. Alexis first got lost on the playa in 2013 and has been burning ever since. He calls Black Rock City home, but also Tanqua Town and a few other regionals. In partnership with the founders of Dragon Burn, Korea Burn, and Taiwan, he's been a leader of Spice and Vice for many years. Spice and Vice is a medium-sized camp with about 60 burners from all over the world, mostly Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. And their camp aims at creating a cultural exchange between various burner cultures. Spice and Vice has embarked on a project to make their camp sustainable through alternative sources of energy, refrigeration, kitchen, and water recycling. Hi, Alexis. Welcome. All right. Hopefully by now you all have completed our poll. Fox, is it possible to close and share some results and kind of see what we have? All right. Ooh, we have so much variety around what we do with food. Everything from like almost exactly like in some more than thirds. Yeah, we have to over 100% here. Some combination of everyone brings their own food or organizing one or more meals per day. Some dinner is a very popular one. And then we also have a bunch of us who have a master food list that we all do pre-playa shopping and then bring together to eat. And we're also, many of us, interested in kitchen sustainability, including our food waste, food scraps, our energy uses in the kitchen, and what we do with our gray water. I'm really glad that you guys are excited about this too, because this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. To start us off, I want to move us towards how some of our cooking and kitchen intersect with how we express ourselves in the 10 principles. There are many different ways to approach the culture of food in our camps. And opening this up with our panelists, I would like you all to talk about the vision and mission of your camp in regards to cooking and feeding yourselves as others. Yurin, I want to start with you. Feed the Artists has organized themselves around providing food for others. And in particular, you have spoken about food as an art form. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's great to see everyone. So Feed the Artist was founded by Colonel Angus in 2007 with the explicit blessing, actually, of Larry Harvey. And it was, it was founded on the principle of, okay, there's all this amazing art, there's community, it's a gifting culture. So let's combine, art and gifting in the form of food. And we come to the playa as early as possible during Build Week. And our primary mission has always been to actually literally feed the artists during Build Week. So we go, we have a number of, volunteer chefs in our camp. I'm one as well. I'm amateur, but we have some pro chefs, all volunteers, of course, part of our community. And we make our family dinners and brunches. And then during Build Week, we go out and we just bring a whole convoy with, 40, 50 people. And we're just looking for artists who might be hungry. We look for those lights. And we've heard countless of stories of artists who are so moved by just this oasis of food coming, oftentimes when they most need it. Sometimes it reduces people to tears, just that this is happening after they've been working, 12 hours straight or what have you. And so that's always been our mission, but it's also helpful for our camp. We're about 85 people in terms of our camp size. But we, indoctrinate, maybe it's not the best word, but our culture internally as a camp is all about the food. Everyone who camps with us has to work 4 shifts in the kitchen. And while that may sound like work, it's actually that bonding experience that really brings the community together. So, we're about service and community, and the mission of serving the community with nourishment, the artists during Build Week, the community at large during Burn Week. We do a late night food court, and on some nights we feed 1,000 people. It's pretty cool. But in doing that service, radical inclusion, feeding the community, gifting, another, of course, principle. In executing on that, we create a very tight knit, mostly drama-free camp because everyone is serving towards that mission.
Nice. Jesse, jump in here because your camp, much smaller than Feed the Artists, you guys also do use the concept of cooking as a way of bringing camp together.
Yes, we do. So our initial camp was porch times. It had a giant wooden porch. It went away for a few years, but we actually came back in our last time at Burning Man as porch cast with the porch again. And it was all about creating community in that environment and the conversations you'd have on that porch. So part of engaging with people and attracting them from the outside is that we would have meals on that porch. And so we started having a daily dinner, a daily sunset happy howl. And I think maybe it's this past year we actually applied for a kitchen permit and started feeding folks because we're in a plaza and there's passersby and a lot of them were getting stuck in the ice line during the day. So we started sharing because it became such a meaningful part of our camp. Unlike a lot of the camps I think that are speaking today, we cook before we go to playa. So part of being in our camp is participating in that cook, meeting each other ahead of being in the desert together in that high stress environment. And we freeze everything. We cook it on playa so far as boiling it in a bag to share with all of your accoutrement added later. So it's a low lift for us when we're stressed, when we're hot, when we're tired, but it still brings us back together at the end of the day.
Nice. I love that we now have two ways of bringing our camps together reflected in Yuri and Feed the Artist cooks right there on playa as things are going. And Jesse, your camp pre-cooks and starts cultivating that community even before you come. Kat, do you want to jump in and talk about planning and preparing a kitchen and how your camp does with this?
Yeah, thank you. And welcome everyone. It's so nice to see everybody here. So I consider myself polycamperous. I've got two camps that I've been heavily involved with, and that's Burners Without Borders and ID8. ID8 is Burners Without Borders is where I've been residing the last few years, but ID8 I've been with them for a long time, and that's where the compost program has been hosted for the last 8 years. And so I would say with both of them, there is this really beautiful thing that happens in any kitchen, in any home, in any place in the world, right? Where, you have a party and all the people are hanging out in the kitchen, right? People love food and they always want to be around the food. It's comforting, right? And so at Burners Without Borders, we really wanted our kitchen to be the sexiest place in camp, and a safe place for people to come and chat and talk about whatever, and feel comfortable in their own skin and just get their hands dirty with food. And one thing that I have noticed between both camps is this incredible ability to have the kitchen be a sacred, calm, joyful place to be. And I was really thinking about why that is. And I came up with kind of 4 basic things to be mindful of. The first one is that pre-prep that Jesse was talking about, really doing a lot of your prepping before playa, and cryovacuuming, which is you putting them in the bags and then sucking the air out. So it's stuck in there, and then boiling that. So a lot of the pre-prep is really helpful. Being overstaffed in the kitchen, having too many people, having enough people, and even just too many people in the kitchen to help with kitchen prep, because that lends itself to everybody feeling calm and relaxed and like there is enough support. The third one is to start on time, because I'm sure we've all had the experience of waiting for the kitchen to feed us and being really hungry and it being an hour late, and that sucks after a day of burning. So starting on time. And the fourth one is to have a binder or some instruction manual for the people who are cooking in your kitchen, because then you could just come in and have instructions there, and you're even if you don't consider yourself the best cook in the world, you at least have something to fall back on where you can say, okay, this, I've got support here. I've got human support and I've got, informational support.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Kat. Alexi, bringing you into this, tell us about the kitchen at Spice and Vice and how you organize and how you encourage and emphasize participation and that community in your camp.
Of course. Hi, everyone. So Spice and Vice is a little bit probably special in the sense that we have people that come from overseas. So the majority of the camp is from all over the world. We also serve a little bit as a hub, acculturation hub for people that organize Dragon Burn, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, and other burns in the Middle East. So we really bring every year we have over 50% of the camp is new campers. They're virgins, they've never been to the big burn, and they come there partly to see what it is. So which means that we reuse the meals as a way to acculture and bring everybody together. Most people don't know each other before coming. So we serve 2 meals a day, everybody cooks. So we have different shifts and everybody's gonna cook a meal every second day and it's gonna be different meals. In terms of the way we organize it, we used to be like more, everything was cooked on playa. More and more now we're moving to preparing ahead of time and then trying to get everything frozen. But at the same time involve recipes that come from China, that comes from the Middle East, etc., and try to learn from those cultures. Also because, frankly, you get a lot from people who used to live in the desert, have been cooking and using ingredients that fare well in the heat, and trying to incorporate that in our recipes. But it's really used as an acculturation and way for people to come together.
Throwing this out to all of you. Anything to add about how you acculturate, especially either new people to your camp or people who are new to Burning Man through the kitchen?
I mean, I'll start. I mean, just to what Alexa was just saying. My first burn was in 17, and I'm an amateur chef, no big deal. But I never cooked for more than 10 people in my life, so I wanted to, help out. So I arrive, I go into the kitchen. I didn't really know anyone at camp. And Chef Murray was in the kitchen. His wife Gemma was in the video earlier on. That was the Feed the Artist kitchen. And I'm like, Chef, how can I help? And he says, well, do you know how to use a knife? And I'm like, yeah. And so he hands me a 50-pound box of onions. Here we go chop some onions. And I chopped onions for like the next 3 hours. And but the way to weave in new campers, we're about a third new campers every year. And it's very important that we have the veterans who know how to run the kitchen. But it's a really powerful bonding thing because you go right into the trenches and you're working alongside people you've never met, but everyone has this common bond, which is we're making food. And so it's a great acculturation tool.
You're in just next time I have to cut any onions, I'm calling on you because that's my least favorite thing to do. I do the crying thing, I want to just add to 2 things. One is to remember just how much time and effort, cooking and prepping, really the prepping part takes. BWB is roughly 100 to 150 people. And we spend 2 months on this project on our kitchen, like roughly 6 hours per week to plan and prepare. So would be less for smaller kitchens, but that's just gives you a sense of how much time we put into this. It's a really important part of our ethos and our environment. And the other thing I wanted to say about prepping food and acculturation and inspiring communal effort is, again, to your point, Yurian, there's something really grounding and magical about putting your hands on fresh food. So at BWB, we always try to have some sort of fresh vegetable or fruit. One, because it's just delicious in the desert and, how wonderful to have that. But also when you are touching these, the fruit of the earth, mind you. It's really, it can be really, you know, you've had a crazy day and you just, when all these things have happened to you and you come into the kitchen and you can just breathe and touch some guava or, you know, watermelon or whatever it is, and connect with people. And it's a really beautiful way to just to relax the nervous system and come back into your body and into your community.
On that note, I find that having folks who can only come midweek, giving them that task of bringing those fresh fruits and vegetables immediately gets them welcomed into the camp so happily because they're bringing this sustenance to everybody else. It's a really nice way to integrate them, even if they haven't been there for the very beginning.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Alexi, go ahead.
No, nothing special to add, except maybe the fact that we use our campers and we pair them in shifts where one experienced campers with two middle experience and then a number of virgin campers. And that's a way also to get people acculturated so that they cook together, but they have someone that is used to cooking in the desert. That's helpful for them.
Yeah. I really like the idea of utilizing kitchen, like putting people to work in the kitchen and specifically about cooking as a way of bringing new people into the ethos of what we do. We all have to eat on the playa if we're going to survive. And so because this is something that we all have to do, it becomes very egalitarian to like, well, you have to eat and I have to eat. So let's work together to figure out how we're both going to eat. And that then becomes something that we are working on together, whether it's actively cooking together on playa or cooking together ahead of time to prepare so that then when we get to playa and we are stressed and tired and burned out, that then here's this lovely thing that past us made to sustain current me. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like preparing or preparing ahead of time, Jesse, you had mentioned that you all do cooking ahead of time that you then freeze and bring sort of pre-prepared. And I wonder how that came about for you all and how much of that was part of trying to reduce the amount of waste or things that you're doing in camp on the playa.
Yeah, so we did a fair amount of research before we brought our camp, thanks ePlaya, to find out the process of deep freezing and flat packing your meals. Because if you have everything frozen solid and in a cooler in order, it's very easy for that person who's coming in that day, look at the label on the cooler to pull it out. The other great thing about it is you're not using cooking utensils. So you're boiling in a bag. You don't have to change out that water every day because it's a plastic bag. You take it out, you serve it from the bag, and it really reduces the waste. We also do pretty small portions at first. The idea is that everybody gets their first serving before they come for a second. That also prevents a little bit of food waste. If there's a delay, that lets you just feel full. It also prevents the extras on your plate. Really just trying to keep our compost at a minimum lets us pack it out wet, because we are able, given that we have campers from Portland, from Seattle, we're able to take advantage of civic composting programs in our cities. So we pack everything out that way. But reducing it from the beginning has been most helpful for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a lot to take back if you don't think about that. Yeah. Particularly as we were preparing this, we realized that a lot of the waste that we are packing out comes from our kitchen, whether that is in terms of packaging or food waste and scrap. And I know that especially talking about food waste and scrap and composting is something that's a hot topic right now. So turning Kat to you, tell us about composting and how we can create, like Jesse talked about packing out food scraps wet, which is possible, especially for some of us with small camps, but might not be possible at scale. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. Definitely a topic that I could nerd out on all day, dear to my heart. Yeah, when I first came to Burning Man, my very first year, I kept getting this message like, what are you contributing? What are you offering? What is your thing, right? And it was a little intense, to be like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing or bringing or offering. But what that turned into is my second year, creating the compost program where we're collecting food waste from camps all over the city, and working with a nearby compost facility to turn that delicious food waste into soil. That program turned into my desire to educate people, not just about the program itself, because to be honest, I don't really care where the food waste goes as long as it's not going to landfill. And I got to talk to some really amazing people who were like, yeah, we're not going to participate because we're already doing it. But then some camps who would say to me, oh, we never, composted our food waste before, and now we have a chance to because we live in Italy and or Rome or whatever. We're all from all over the world and we can't pack it out. So my whole thing is, figure out a way, this is part of the pre-planning, to compost your food waste. And you can for sure pack it out wet. Something that I find helpful is to dry it out if you have the means. And I've got some photos that maybe we'll share later on ways that you can dry out your food waste while you're there on Playa.
Yeah. And actually, I'm wondering if we might be able to show some of Kat's drying photos. Yeah. You scroll just a little bit, keep going. Right there. Yeah. Yeah.
Fresh food.
Keep going. Oh, this is Urian's. There we go.
Yeah, so this is a simple way to dry out your food waste. We just had these big buckets with 4 pieces of wood nailed together, and that's a mesh screen that the food is drying on. And the mesh screen allows for any liquid waste to go into those containers, which then we dump into our gray water. We have to filter it a little bit, make sure there's no excess food there. But yeah, that's a very simple way. I've seen camps with, camps who have put, hundreds to $1,000 into their, drying system and have built something really incredible. But this is what my brain can come up with because I'm not an engineer. Somebody is also saying we use burlap sacks to put all of our food waste in and hang them up until they're completely dry. So the playa is a great, easy way to dry out your compost. The one thing you have to be mindful of is moop. And so really making sure that you have something to catch any debris or, that could fall or get flushed away in the wind, to just be mindful of that, that you're taking care of the moop.
And I think we have a couple of others as well. Fox, if you advance us to the next one. Yeah. This one and the next one, I think we have some great examples of like the compost in the bucket with the screens with something underneath to catch it. And then also like spread out over the top of some kind of tray. And Urian, I think you guys also dry out your compost as well.
I just wanted to say Feed the Artists are huge fans of Ideate. We visit you. I visit you every year, and including my first year. And at that point, your system was different, and then you went to the new system where it goes into the trailer, and obviously our compost used to be pretty wet, and then we would get turned back, for all the good reasons, of course. And so we have a pretty good system now. We use those totes that you see in the bottom, and we filtrate and we drain the liquid, and we do that right next to our gray water holding tank so that we can put the liquid in there. And like we hand sort it as well. You know, those little stickers on the banana peels are like the bane of our existence, you know, because and it's a constant source of education for our kitchen staff, for the lack of a better word, to say, okay, make sure there's no paper in there, no paper towels, no stickers on the banana peels, things like that, because that makes our work a little easier afterwards when we're sorting through all this. And again, you know, during the 2 weeks of build and burn week, we probably make more than 5,000 meals. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of composting. We make daily runs. We use those Home Depot buckets that you see in the back. That's where the finished compost goes, and we're probably bringing 4 to 6 of those to ideate every day.
Yeah. And to ask the question that probably some of us are wondering about, how does it then tend to work about like smell in your camp, or has anyone ever had trouble with, I know we don't get a lot of bugs on the playa, but you never know, like bugs or smell or losing little bits of food in terms of wind and moop?
Yeah, I can answer that. Just kind of in the same way that it's often that humans don't smell because it's so dry and arid. It's the same with compost. If you're not letting the food waste sit and kind of rot in itself, and if you're drying it out, there's really no smell. The compost program collects in one container, can collect up to 20,000 gallons of food waste, which we do, and it never smells, partially because we ask people to dry it out, and also partially because we use a process of rotating the food waste with biochar and wood chips to in case there could be any smell. And we've never had any problems with bugs. I would say one of the number one issues is moop. So really having again, going back to planning and having a game plan around catching anything that the wind might blow, or anything that might fall out of the bags.
Yeah. Cool. I want to bring up another one of the hot topics, I think, in terms of sustainability on playa, which is power. Power, and particularly as it relates to comes into our kitchen, is either like through refrigeration or cooking. And Alexi, you guys at Spice and Vice have something really cool that I would love to hear about your use of solar in your kitchen.
Sure. So it was like 3 years ago we decided that we wanted to get rid of ice and fuel. So we wanted to basically go entirely sustainable, at least from that point of view. And so we designed a solar system that we've been refining ever since, that would go on top of one of the trucks or the containers with all solar panels and with batteries for 13 kilowatts inside one of the trucks. And that would power our fridges, so we could get rid of the coolers and the ice. And also what we've started experimenting now is with induction cooking, because obviously otherwise we have to use propane, which is first dangerous, but also it's still polluting. So we're trying now to do all with induction cooking. We're still in the process. I wouldn't say we're fully there yet, but that's the direction we're going, so that everything in the camp is powered by solar now. And that's the goal. And by the way, we have one camper that has been amazing. He created a system and started to improve it, and he created a guide that is really meant for any camp that is interested in going full solar, and gives tips about how to attach the solar panels, how to design them, how to dimension it, what kind of equipment works well, what doesn't work in the desert, etc. So if anyone is interested, happy to share that. It was redesigned and meant as a guide for anyone who wants to do it at small scale. It is nothing very professional, but it's been tested and improved over the years. So happy to share that with anyone interested.
Yeah. And what you're using for the induction, is that an electrical appliance that you plug in? How does that work?
So it's induction stoves that are designed. The other thing is that you need to change some of your cookware because it has to work with induction. That's the reason why we're not fully there yet. I would say we're halfway. But the goal is to get rid entirely of propane. I think last year we used 1 can of propane, and we want to get rid of it entirely. Hopefully by next year.
Yeah. And the refrigerators that you are talking about, is there anything special that you found about working with refrigerators and solar, particularly on Playa where it's really warm?
It's actually not bad at all. We thought it would be worse, but they don't consume that much. They use about 1 kilowatt per day, so it was totally fine. We put them inside one of the trucks. So yes, it gets warm, but they're not directly in the sunlight. And what we did is that we actually acquired 3 of them, and they're fridge and refrigerator at the same time. So you can decide whether you want to run them as a fridge or you want to use them as a freezer. And as we go through the week, initially a lot is frozen, and then we move into refrigerator mode when we just want to keep stuff cool. And I mean, we realized that with 2 fridges, it was enough for 60 people. We now moved to 3 to just have enough room and make sure we don't need to cram them initially. But it's been working better than we thought. We thought we'd have issues with the dust, with the heat, etc. And actually, it's been running. We over-dimensioned our solar system initially because we thought it would consume much more. But it was totally fine. Now, this being said, I think the last few years have been fairly easy. But so far it's been really well.
Excellent. And do you use like regular like fridges that you would have in your house, or is that some kind of like commercial fridge or like chest freezer? Like, give us a sense for what you guys are using.
Yeah, so we've tried all of them. So we have 1 chest freezer now, which is very convenient for things that for the end of the week, etc. But you don't want to have to open it all the time. You don't want to have to go to the bottom of it. And then we have 2 standing fridges with glass so that you can see exactly what's in it. And we label outside, so on the glass, we label everything that's in it so that you know exactly. It's one of the key issues that where you lose a lot of power is when people start opening it and closing it many times. So we want to make sure people know exactly where they want to get it. It's already labeled, it's labeled from the outside, they can check it visually, and then they just open it and grab it and then close it. And that makes a big difference. If people don't open the fridge very often, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean,
Urian, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, on that note, I mean, you raised some great points. We're still kind of old school. I mean, I'd love to become more sustainable, but we at this point we rent a diesel generator because our reefer is a 20-foot container, not like an official refrigerated container, but we converted it into basically a giant walk-in fridge. We just bought like this condenser unit, put it in there, jerry-rigged the whole thing. But we don't want to go in there all the time, opening the doors because, we have 2 weeks worth of food in there because we arrive Monday of build week and we have to like run this all the way to the end. I mean, Bonanza delivers some produce during at the beginning of burn week, and obviously people as they roll in, they're tasked with bringing stuff as well. But in order to prevent too much leakage from that 40 degrees or whatever the temperature is, we have 2 regular house fridges that are that are on the outside of that in our kitchen. So that we have stuff, milk for the morning coffee, or if someone has their own stash of food, like it goes there. Like only the chefs are allowed in the reefer. And then we have 3 chest freezers, 1 for just ice for the bar, but 2 for exactly, people early on, right, when we're not producing meals yet for the community, when we're still setting up camp. We bring in, our pre-prepped frozen food, and that goes in the chest freezer, and it stays good for quite a while. So we use a hybrid system of kind of a serious reefer that probably wouldn't apply maybe to some people on this in this meeting, but we use those standard fridges as well.
Yeah, Jeffy, I know that you guys have refrigerators as well. Tell us a little bit more about your setup. And you had mentioned as you were talking about your pre-prepped food that labeling it so that as part of this is a big thing for you guys also.
Yeah, so we're kind of a rags to riches camp. So we've definitely done it with a chest freezer and a tow behind generator, diesel generator. But starting out, we only had coolers that were begged, borrowed, or stolen. And in order for this to work on Playa, we had to make sure that everything was frozen solid, that we had everything stored in order, that our binder of meals had what cooler everything was in, so that nobody opened a cooler unnecessarily. Like, they knew they were going for the sour cream in the red cooler on day 3. And then just basic rules of thermodynamics. The coolers are in shade structures. Our shade structures are built off of other shade structures. They're at one point even wrapped in their own insulation, depending on what kind of year it was, to keep them maintained and cooled. And then every other bit of food that's in camp is separated. So people's private coolers are also in shade and in a cool area, so that they're not digging around through the meal plan coolers. And we found it worked really well. We never had any meltdowns. I think another important part of it is controlling your ice, making sure that you're transferring the dirty ice bags into clean containers so that you're not potentially spoiling or melting down your coolers, because it is so important to have safe food.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you guys have both refrigerators with camp meals, and then also some mechanism for people to have their own like private food, like particularly I think for people to have some flexibility around specific dietary needs, or if you're the only person in camp who likes this particular snack or something like that, then there's some setup for that as well. This is maybe a nice like roll into talking about hacks. How I would love for us to talk a little bit about especially building on what Jesse has just talked about, like moving from one way of doing things to another way of doing things, especially when we learn from the trials of others. What are some things that you all have learned over your collective years that has either been a disaster that you learned from, or something that was this golden nugget that's turned out to be wonderful? Yeah,
I would say our first disaster was probably gray water evat ponds, especially, and also communal water. And I think that might have happened in the same year. We have water for the kitchen, and then everybody else has to bring their own water, because if you're not careful, you can easily create a siphon and lose everything. The year that 2013, was that when the gates closed for 3 days? And it was like Saturday to Wednesday. We had attempted to do the gray water evaporation, but if it's raining, it doesn't work out so well. So that was one of our hacks that we really hoped for, that we wanted to do. But instead, we just reduced our water consumption, and we rent one container that we never actually need to get pumped out, because we're using the 3-bin system for our kitchen washing too, and we're not using anything for prep. That actually has been the best hack. Is there's too many points of failure with gray water and the weather not cooperating, so we now rent a gray water bin.
Mm-hmm. And that how you have structured pre-preparing your meals and then doing boil in a bag on Playa, and then with your 3-bin system, not only are you creating a system that's hyper efficient in your camp for meals and feeding people and then cooking them, and then it also has this downstream effect to the need for water and gray water in your camp.
The only other thing I'd add to that, because I think this is a really good point, is don't waste your cooler water. The ice from the ice bags, put it in a Ziploc. It melts. It's potable. You don't want to spoil it. You don't want it to spoil your food. Using that water and cycling it into your system makes sure it never hits your gray water tank. And that's another really good way to not create excess gray water.
Nice. Others? That's about hacks you're in.
Prep. you know, again, when I came to Burning Man, I'd never cooked for more than 10 people. Now I do the Saturday meal of build week, and I make my specialties Indonesian rice tafel. So if you've been on the receiving side of that, you've probably had it, but I do that every year on Saturday. And obviously we have our family meal, and then we go out and feed whatever artists are still building. And then after that, we go to Gate. And then we feed, you know, another 100 people at the Gate party. But, you know, the prep for any meal, I think is really important so that you're not, you know, going crazy at the 11th hour trying to put this dinner together. And of course, it reduces the risk that the dinner is served really late. I mean, you know, we've had nights where, for whatever reason, you know, we're eating at 9 instead of at 7, and it's just, you know, people get grumpy when they're not getting fed. So the prep, whether it's you know, prepped off playa and frozen and brought in, or whether it's just, you know, you start at 1 o'clock, you know, in the afternoon with a team, and you know, better to have a couple of hours at the end where you can, you know, you can just kind of relax. And then, you know, to what you said earlier, Jesse, in terms of the gray water tanks, you know, we've built in some redundancy where we have 2 low profile 250-gallon tanks. I mean, again, this is at a scale that maybe doesn't apply to a lot of camps, but we have that second one sitting empty almost all the time. But you know, what if there's a storm and the pump truck doesn't come and that tank is getting full? Obviously, we don't want to have moop. We don't want to have an environmental situation. And we also don't want to have to shut our kitchen down because the gray water tank is full. So building some redundancies in place in that way has been very helpful for us.
I'd like to bring in just something I'm seeing in the chat. This person is saying that they only use block ice. All coolers have double bubble insulation on the inside, including the top. They make 30-ish blocks of ice. Coolers are off of the playa, and they drain the cooler water daily. The drained water is for pre-chilling. And they still have ice after 13 days. It's pretty good. You know, I'm not sure this really goes in the realm of hacks, but just some kind of musings and curiosities that, you know, maybe our folks who are listening have answers to, or maybe just people who are watching can really think about. But, you know, kitchen layout is really important, you know. That's something that I feel like I've seen change every year until you finally just get one that's just really solid, and you want to be thinking about like the flow of the kitchen and people who are working in it, but also the flow of the people who are going to be coming to eat, and where things are stored and how things are organized. And, you know, we're talking about food prep a lot, but what we haven't said yet is how are we thinking about, you know, and food waste and people prep. Like, how are we thinking about the flow of food? Okay, we've given this meal, but now we have this much left over. What are we going to do with the leftovers? How is that stuff going to be organized in the location that you're in? Like, you know, the freezer or whatever you're putting it in. And then humans too. Like, how are we organizing people in the flow of people as well?
Yeah. I know. Oh, Urian, please.
No, just on that note, Kat, you know, when we do our late night food court, that's for us a really clever way of really not having any food waste, because, you know, like the day lead chef, you know, especially the roadies, like I used to be, they always make too much rice, right? Like our seasoned chef says, you know, it's 1/3 of a cup per person, you don't need more. So we always have this giant pot of rice. And then, you know, if there's a protein left over, well, guess what? We're going to make fried rice, you know, for late night food court. And it's, you know, it's a great way of just really not having anything left over, because we'll do late night until we run out of food. And so some nights that's, you know, 1 hour, some nights it's 5 hours. And so, but I think to Jesse's earlier point about food safety, that's a really important thing for us because we are a food camp, and so for our late night, we have more people serving food than cooking food, right? The cooking food is kind of okay. You're making buffalo chicken sandwiches or whatever, but we don't want anyone touching the food when they come by, right? And we'll have hundreds and hundreds of people coming by, so we have a server for every dish that is out there. And we have this cool stainless steel hand washing station with a foot pedal. And then we have sort of maitre d's, if you will, that are doing the people flow as they are lining up, make sure they wash their hands. And so there's a whole system there that we find works well. But the food safety obviously on Playa is a huge priority. And like even in our reefer, the proteins go on the bottom shelf. They don't go on the top shelf where they can leak onto other things and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. I know in our camp, some of the hacks around what we cook and what we eat have also revolved around discovering that a particular type of food is not great for Playa because it's moopy or because we just don't feel like eating that after several days in the sun. I think a nice segue into my personal favorite topic of the night, which is what are we eating? Is I want to come to like Thai hacks and what are we eating through Alexi. I'm going to pull you up to the hot seat because you have your Spice and Vice in particular with the campers that you are bringing are utilizing recipes and types of food that have been traditionally eaten in the desert and in hot places and are really well suited for the Playa. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that's right. We have a number of campers that come from Bahrain or Saudi Arabia or China. And one of the things they've been introducing, first of all, is much more vegan food, but also ingredients using a lot of chickpeas and jackfruits and tempeh and things like that actually do fairly well in hot weather, much easier. I mean, avoiding things like broccolis and lettuce, etc., that you always get trouble with. So that's been really, really interesting. And the way they use it, the way they cook it, do curries and things like that has been very helpful. I'm happy to share some of the recipes, but they've really come with this knowledge of what you can do in hot climate and what works well, and avoid having troubles. Because indeed, I mean, keeping everything safe on the Playa is key. That's something that's quite interesting. And I would encourage anyone to just look online for recipes for hot climates. There's actually a lot of stuff.
Do you have some favorites in your camp?
I would say the finger food is very helpful, like homemade hummus and things like that. I mean, all the ingredients can last forever, and you just do that on Playa is really good. I mean, we used to bring, for example, a lot of hummus and things like that, but that doesn't last necessarily very long. But if you take the ingredients themselves, then they can last forever, and then you can do fresh hummus every day. Same thing with tempeh. I mean, the jackfruit has been a big one for that. Honestly, personally, I didn't know. And we've been, I think, last year eating jackfruit every second meal because we're always doing a vegan version, a non-vegan version. But the vegan version, you can get to meals where it's pretty damn good. And using jackfruit in all different ways is quite interesting.
What kind of utensil or food tool are you using to make your hummus fresh every day on the Playa?
I would say traditional one. I mean, you obviously need things to be able to break it and you kind of purees, etc. But mostly manual tools to reduce the amount of washing and the difficulty of cleaning a blender or something like that. Though because we have too much power, we could use blenders, but usually we do it manually. It's also more fun.
Nice. Yeah. Others, and Alexi, please feel free to chime in about this as well. Others, what are some of your favorite foods to eat or foods that you have discovered that don't work very well on the Playa? I'm really surprised that a lot of people have been talking about rice. We've had bad luck with rice in our camp on the Playa.
Yeah, rice is a notoriously hard one to cook. I find also in the desert. A chef friend of mine said that he heard this year that maybe we might do a rice cooker. Maybe we can figure out how to do it solar powered. But yeah, so an alternative to that is noodles, right? Because you can boil those. That uses a lot of water, but yeah. And other things that are hard on the playa, I have found are dairy and gluten. I guess with a larger camp, you kind of can run into food preferences and allergens and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, we're really mindful of those two things. And then in terms of favorite foods, I don't think I have ever been to a playa without having some sort of curry or stew, because they're just so nutritious and soul warming and like heartwarming and, you know, packed with liquid and protein and, you know, all the good stuff. And it's relatively easy to make as well.
But by the way, Alexis, tempeh is my new hack. I was in Holland a few weeks ago, and a lot of Indonesian food there, and I had some tempeh, and I've always made tofu as my vegan/vegetarian dish, because everyone at Feed the Artist, there has to be a vegan and vegetarian or pescatarian dish at all times. But I find tempeh to be a lot better than tofu, just because it has that nice texture. So that's going to be on the menu this year. But one hack is someone donated to us a bunch of tomatoes one year, and half of them were kind of like on their way out. So no tomatoes, just get canned tomatoes, so that was one lesson learned. But obviously bacon, and if you eat bacon in the morning, that smell of bacon as you're looking for your coffee in first thing in the morning is always something that's on our menu. But I agree with curries, things with sauces. It's very nurturing, and the desert's dry, so having something that's saucy is very good. And just one other thing, because we do our family meals and then we do a late night, things like we always have sort of extra tortillas and grated or shredded cheese, so that if someone made pork the night before, we're going to convert that pork into pork quesadillas, and so there's really some good ways to plan meals so that the leftovers can be utilized in another delicious way.
Yeah, Jesse, please.
Yeah. I just wanted to add that we actually, in part of our intake process, is finding out what everyone's allergies are and supporting them in our meal plan. So I find that's a really good way to acculturate campers. Like, they know they're valued, and we're not bothered by doing vegan, gluten-free. Like, we're all flexible, and in a lot of ways it lets you get their input on the menu and what they already like. In that case, like, meat is a side. Another thing that's interesting about the camp organization, which I had forgotten about, is we have red and green tape so that if it's a meat utensil or a veggie utensil, so that if somebody wants to come in midday and use our kitchen, they can. And hopefully they're making my favorite, which is green curry on playa.
Nice.
There's some good ones here too in the chat. Somebody's saying polenta works really well on playa. If you do noodles, you can pre-cook them, vacuum seal them, freeze them, and there's no gray water. Somebody loves Thai curry. Cheryl loves late night ramen bar. Kid likes soup. It helps hydrate you, and you can have cool soup on a hot day. Flat Tire likes Moroccan lentil stew, and you can do a meat or a non-meat version. Gary says canned food rules.
I'm wondering about because several of you have mentioned ways to use leftovers, and particularly about canned food, like food that comes in a can that also has liquid. What are your ways of dealing with that? Working it into the recipe somehow? Disposing of it? Or we just choose something without the liquid?
That's a good question. I don't think I think we stay away from cans that are like mostly, like whatever. I don't even know what goes in a can with has a lot of liquid, but yeah, that's kind of a no-no, I guess, or to be discouraged at least.
Yeah. Alexi, what about you?
Yeah, same thing. We try to stay away from it. I mean, there's always a little bit, but try to stay away from food as in liquid.
Yeah. I really appreciate Yuri and you talking about this. I think someone had called it in the chat trickle down food prep, where like whatever was the leftover from last night then becomes incorporated into something that we're doing for today. And it also sounds like all of you do some type of pre-planning overall around the meals before you get to playa. And I'm wondering how much kind of food anarchy there is in your camps when you get there of knowing what ingredients we have, I'm gonna like whip something up that wasn't pre-planned.
We no food anarchy at Feed the Artist because our kitchen is a well-oiled machine, no pun intended. And we have a crew in there, right, for brunch and then in the afternoon for dinner. So you can't just sort of wander in there and make yourself a grilled cheese. I mean, maybe one of the chefs is making grilled cheeses anyway, but our meals are well calibrated, well ahead of time. Because every year we have this, right? Okay, we ended up not getting enough eggs, but we have way too many onions. And so, every chef, every day lead is responsible for his or her ingredients. So if you need, 20 pounds of onions, you should bring them. But we do get one delivery from Bonanza, and that's usually like bananas. It's fresh, obviously all produce. But we need to manage that because we have to store this stuff. It has to stay fresh, and we need to know what people are bringing so that it can be used. So we don't want to have really unpractical dishes. We want to have stuff that's scalable and that can be reused. We can always use some extra onions, but one year I brought way too much garlic. I'm like, okay, we're not fending off vampires on the playa. So.
Alexi, what about you?
Yeah, so we also try to avoid anarchy on the food because you don't want to end the week with the wrong stuff. And also there's things that go bad faster. So we basically have a menu list with recipes that are very clearly delineated and a pull-out list. So every time when a team is about to cook, they know exactly what they're going to cook, what they can take, what are the volume for each kind of ingredients. They pull it out and they start cooking. And that's really what they need to work with. So it's very precise and it's documented on our fridges.
Yeah.
I mean, the last day becomes a bit different, but until then, it's pretty organized.
Yeah. And Jesse, it sounds like you also are thinking about the order in which you're scheduling your meals, particularly like it sounds like condiments that are going along with some of your in the bag stuff.
Yeah, and that makes sure they get used. And also that we're thinking about, well, we should use the more sensitive dairy earlier in the week. I would say we have controlled chaos because we do have a communal snack pantry that has a lot of easily prepped items in it that's part of what your dues cover is, you create your wish list, we collate them, and then there's a snack pantry so that people aren't tempted to start digging around in coolers when they're feeling a little snacky. Like there's a well-labeled cabinet full of easy prep things like instant mashed potatoes or ramen or gummy bears, then that kind of if you distract them, the chaos will be reduced.
That person in the chat has to be a fellow Dutchman or Dutch person because they're mentioning stamppot, which is a Dutch dish. So.
Yeah. I wonder if we maybe also go around and share what is the most memorable meal you have ever had at Burning Man?
Ours is funny and embarrassing. We did it last year. Someone had the brilliant idea of making kitty kibble because we're kind of a cat themed camp. So we had all these clean cans that we relabeled with our camp name and logo, and we offered cereal and milk to people in the plaza, and everyone loved it. It was ridiculous. Of course, we took the cans back, no moop, but some wanted to keep them because they were labeled. So that was very memorable. I don't know if it was the best meal, but it was memorable.
Our chef Murray, who is our kitchen god, he runs the kitchen. On Sundays, he makes a paella, which is pretty spectacular. But all his dishes are. He's done two pigs on a spit right outside of camp, and those go all day, like luau's. We've had one of our chefs make poke on the playa. I know someone mentioned the tuna guys, but we're spoiled in that department.
Yeah. Kat, what about you?
Last year we actually, I don't know if you can pull up the photo, but there's a great photo of one of our chefs making paella in these, as the way that you make paella. So that was really yummy. Yeah, there it is. Yum.
Awesome.
And that
Alexis,
is a
what's
serious grill. Holy cow.
Yeah, it is. Look at that. Alexis, what's yours?
I know. I think last year we had one person that was coming from a minority from Eastern China, and she came with a recipe from her grandma, which was lamb with raisins, etc. It was absolutely delicious. So that was one of my best experience in terms of culinary. And then being Belgian, we couldn't help but do some French fries last year. I wouldn't recommend that on playa. I don't think it's the kind of recipe that is meant for that, but we still did.
Excellent. My favorite meal that we do in our camp is the very first dinner that we have everyone. Like many of us have been there for Build Week, or we're coming in at different times. But the very first meal that we have everyone on playa together for our whole camp. And I caveat this with, we are a very small camp. We are max 15. But we do beautiful steak dinner with wine, usually some kind of nice starch, a beautiful veggie or a salad, and really have a communal dinner that is like relatively fancy for our dusty environs, to mark that we're all now here together. Before we as we're transitioning into some Q&A from the chat, as Epiphany, our chat mod, kind of collates some questions in together, there was another kind of trial and error hack that I wanted to call out, and maybe with the first picture from our slide deck. Jesse, will you tell us about the grease catch?
Okay. So we may have lost or realized at some point that our grease catch didn't exist. And while we do always put a tarp down when we end up with a kitchen and a carport, this was in a trailer, and we realized that we were dripping grease into this trailer, which we owned, but still, we improvised a little cup holder for the grease. And at first I was like, why did they add a beer holder to the grill? I mean, it makes sense, until I realized that it was actually our grease catch. We have a thing in camp where we vet super fucking useful humans, and this is one of those things that a super fucking useful human would come up with, Wednesday of build. Just, we've got to do what we've got to do. So here it is.
I love when people's secret skill sets overlap with things that involve food. Those are definitely super fucking useful humans.
Yeah, he was definitely cooking his eggs from his chickens and his farm on that grill at most of that build that year. So useful.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Epiphany, what questions do we have from the chat? Participants, this is your time to get your questions into the chat so that Epiphany can field them to our panelists for more information about their stuff. So please put your questions in the chat. Epiphany, what questions do we have for our people to share with us?
Okay, I have quite a few questions from the registration about where to find meal plans for groups and for individuals with respect to cost, with respect to if it's during the event week or build or strike. Any thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I mean, what we do is, every day that we're there, someone has signed up to be the day lead, and then there's a team that helps him or her either with prep or cooking or washing dishes or what have you. But that person will design the meal, and that person is responsible for getting the ingredients to camp, either by delegating it or, some things we centrally buy, especially dried goods, things like that. But most of our, day leads, our chefs will, go to one of the big box stores, whether it's a restaurant supply store. Like I go to the U.S. chef store in Reno. So when we arrive, I've already pre-ordered it. They require 2-3 weeks notice for Burning Man. And we go in there and I fill up the car, it's practically falling out the windows. And then we drive to the playa. Other people go to, to Costco or what have you. But that's how we do it. So, and obviously at scale, you want to minimize, the expense. You want to have the food be obviously as good as possible, organic if possible. It's not always practical, but we try. But that's the way we do it. So we have some central purchases so that we know we have enough bread for grilled cheese sandwiches in the middle of the night. But every chef designs a menu and needs to make sure that those ingredients land. And it's the same for everyone, right? On their way in, they go to one of the big stores, and then if something spoils or they forget something, it's okay. So-and-so is coming on Monday. Guess what they're doing? They're going to Costco because we need something that we don't have.
And Urian, do you need to be a chef to go to the chef store, or do you just need the planning to be able to order it ahead of time?
No, you don't need to be a chef because I'm not a chef. And so they like staff up specifically for Burning Man. They'll bring people in from maybe like the Sacramento location or some other location just to handle the flow. But it's you do need to kind of be prepared. You don't want to just roll in, on Sunday. And so the chef store used to be, what's it called? Smart and Final, I think. They changed names, but I find them to be really good to work with. And you just go online, you place the order, 2 weeks in advance. And, it's always kind of this last minute race where whatever you ordered is not always available. This especially was the case a couple of years ago when we had the supply chain bottlenecks, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, you ordered 50 pounds of chicken thighs, but we don't have any. And then I had to go get chicken breasts, which is not great for this Indonesian stew that I was making. So you have to be willing to roll with the punches and improvise.
No plan survives contact with the playa. Yeah. In terms of hacks for preparing food, we found at our camp that having a big breakfast before we go to Costco means that we're much better about sticking to the list.
That's a great tip. All right, are we ready for our next question? Okay.
Yeah.
There were a lot of questions and comments about how to motivate campers to contribute to their shifts. Also how to educate them to follow their cleaning practices, or recycling and handling food waste. Want to say some more about that?
Yeah. Lexi.
Yeah, for me, there's one thing which is really about managing expectations. I feel that a lot of the campers that don't necessarily respect their shift, etc., is because they came to the burn without necessarily expecting it. So what we do is that we basically have a phone conversation with every camper long before. We tell them, here's how the camp works, here's what you can expect, but here's what we expect, here's how much work it's going to be, etc. And once people have those expectations set, things get much, much easier. I think usually when people don't necessarily want to do their duty or chores is because they didn't think they would have to.
I'll just add to that when we do our shifts, so we have veteran chefs, veteran campers, and then we have about a third are newbies, and we encourage newbies to be a day lead. I mean, everyone has to work in the kitchen, but we encourage anyone to take that leap and make a meal. Maybe not in their very first year, but maybe in their second year. But so if it is a new chef in that sense, we make sure we have veterans in the kitchen so that they know how to do it. And then anyone working a shift that they know, okay, this is how the composting works. Take the peels off the banana, take the labels off the banana peels, and this is how you clean the dishes and not. So having a mix of veterans and newcomers in working side by side, I think is an important thing.
Yeah. Fox, would you put up the second slide in our deck, which is Jesse's shift schedule? I heard both Jesse and Kat talk about redundancy in your shifts and what you're doing. I wonder if both of you could touch on that as well.
Yes, so these are actually completed before Playa. Part of the requirements of being in camp means that you have to sign up for a certain number of shifts depending on the population that year. We switch it to this board on Playa. We also have it printed and laminated because it's just easier to see. And who knows how well you can see like Thursday morning of the event. This also allows people the opportunity to switch out. We've had health incidents that have led people to go home early, and then we know that we need to swap people in and out. And I do agree, it's all about setting expectations. Like everybody who comes in, they've been interviewed, they've filled out the questionnaire. We have our own survival guide in addition to the Burning Man survival guide, and it is in that binder, that Camp Bible. It's always available. So if somebody forgets or their second hand isn't on staff at that very moment, they can always open that binder and say, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do with the sanitation right before I start my shift.
Yeah, I'll add something that we also let our campers know is, if you do need to miss your shift, if you know ahead of time, like, oh shoot, I really wanted to attend that one thing, and I thought it was on Thursday, but it's on Wednesday when my shift is, to find someone to trade your shift and then get in touch with somebody who can make that apparent on the board. Another couple of things that came to my mind was, with the redundancy, is just having a ton of information. Not, you've got the binder as information, and then you've got signs as information. The camp layout is also in itself information, like where are we washing our hands? Putting that in a very specific place that is kind of obvious to the flow of how people are coming in and out. And so that's really helpful when you're on Playa. But pre-Playa, another way to get people really involved is to have them come out and cook, like scheduling cook days, and doing that together. And because, it's the IKEA effect, right? If you create it, then there's a sense of ownership and a love of what you've created, because you did it. So having people come together to cook food.
Epiphany, what's next?
Yeah, so we have some questions about considering, what to consider with regard to kitchens and feeding groups of different sizes. So what kinds of things change in a kitchen if you're trying to feed 10 versus 30 versus 50, and it sounds like maybe some other larger numbers of people, and also how to calculate the amount of food needed to feed different sizes of groups.
I think on that last question, this is where our veteran chefs really come in, right? So when I did my first lead as a chef, you know, I asked Murray and Daniel and other chefs, they help you. And like the thing with the rice, it's like everyone makes too much rice, don't make too much rice. You need so much protein. You want to have this variety. You want to have a vegan, vegetarian option. So for us, this is where the institutional knowledge comes in of having people who have done it before us.
Jesse?
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, it took us a while to decide what a portion was. And then once we decided, like, you know, the average appetite of everybody in camp, we just modified our favorite recipes to that portion multiplied by the number of campers. It's a little daunting at first because it is food and it is important, but once you have it sorted and you see what's left, you know, after your first year, then you can get into a rhythm that kind of expands and extends throughout the rest of your burnings.
Nice. Okay. Does anybody have best practices or feel like they have expertise on going for zero gray water? All right, maybe something to look into. How about what fundraising initiatives have you found effective for food-based gifts and food art?
Sorry, I just wanted to go back to that other question, and just a real quick plug here for my buddy Mark, who is over at Ocean Beach. They were able to utilize a gray water system and evaporation system and evaporate 100% of their gray water. So I don't know about zero gray water, but ultimately got down to zero. And I will just say that you can actually find, oh great, PETA just put it in the chat, but you can find the gray water system on the Thrival Guide, which is www.thrival.guide. And they've put out their system and how they created it, and I've seen it, and as somebody who doesn't pride herself on being able to build much, this totally looks doable. So check it out. Sorry, Ryan, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. I was just gonna speak to the last question about fundraising. You know, that's one thing that we haven't really done at Feed the Artists. You know, it's not, you know, like if you're like Mayan Warrior or you're some camp that lends itself to an event where you can raise money, or Costume Cult or one of those, you know, it makes a lot of sense. But our kitchen is in 2 shipping containers in Reno, and it's like, we can't really scale that as a fundraiser, you know, like we could, I don't know how we would do that. So for us, you know, we are obviously, everything is gifted, and we are entirely funded by our camp dues. So that's how we do it.
We throw events, pre-playa. We've done everything from silent auctions to car washes to our most successful, which is an every other year slip and slide party. My biggest advice is to make sure that you have people sign paperwork for injuries.
Epiphany, do we have any other big questions for our people?
Sure. All right. So does the health department ever inspect?
Yes, we have been inspected. always with flying colors, I might add. But I wouldn't say we're getting inspected every year, but we have been inspected. Someone rolls in and it's like a full inspection. They make sure you're not, commingling raw chicken on the same prep table as, vegetables that are being eaten raw. Like it's stuff like that. Temperature of our reefer, things like that. So yes.
Yeah. And PETA put in the chat, and we'll have this on our resources guide also, how to apply for a food permit for Burning Man.
Which I hear is pretty simple.
Yeah.
All right, Vesper, would you like to wrap us up?
Yeah. Thank you all for coming today. Really appreciate the time to talk about some food. I am hungry now. And I'm also very much looking forward to coming to share a meal on Playa with all of you. I hope to see you there, see you in the dust, and commune over some food when we get there. Please take some time, participants, to fill out our feedback form for the meeting. Suggest other themes or topics for future campfire talks. And Fox, as we head out, would you throw up some of the slides of pictures that we have of our participants' kitchens? Thank you all my panelists for being here today. It was really wonderful to talk to you all. Thank you for participants, and we will see you all next month for our final campfire talk of the season.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. That was a great conversation.
Yeah, fun.
Appreciate all the support. And
Thank
you're all
you.
invited to dinner.
Oh, we're coming. Don't worry.